Hey everyone, it's Megan Wise with Keller Williams Portfolio, and I have a special guest on our Portfolio podcast today. Here with me is Pete Peterson. Hello, Pete.
Hello.
Thank you for coming. We're so excited to have him here. He is the president of the City of Fishers Council, and he is a wealth of knowledge, so I'm just so thankful that he gave us his time today. And we're going to talk today about the ordinance that is proposed for our City of Fishers that creates a rental cap of 10% in each neighborhood in the City of Fishers. So what that means is when you are in your neighborhood, let's call it a 200 unit neighborhood, the ordinance would pass and state that only 10% of homes can actually be rentals in their neighborhood. There's obviously exceptions and there's a lot of chatter about it. So we're here today just kind of flesh it all out. So Pete, tell us kind of the background of this ordinance and why you feel like it's so important for us to have.
The interesting thing, Megan, about the ordinance is the fact that we've been working on it for 2 years.
Yeah.
This is not a new item for us.
Yeah.
We've received a lot of complaints from a lot of neighborhoods going, they're either, not taking care of the property, or there seems to be people buying houses out from underneath maybe their kids who are now coming back trying to buy a house. So there's a variety of different things that came to us. So we started looking into it about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So legally you have to run traps all over the place to make sure that any kind of ordinance you're going to do is not going to violate state law and or anything like that.
So you guys did a deep dive for the last 2 years on this.
Deep dive, for
and
sure.
The research, the massive majority of that research you guys created, which I've read through a little bit, states that this is going to be good for Fishers and is needed.
Well, we certainly believe it's going to be good for Fishers residents, right? That's who we need to take care of. I mean, that's again who we work for as elected officials. So that's what we're most concerned with.
Okay, and then in general, we know that there's two sides of this issue. What do you think the biggest opposition, what are they saying?
Well, I mean, I know what they're saying. I don't know how much is accurate, right?
Fair.
So I think there's certainly a vested interest by those parties who buy rental houses and make that for a living. And I'm not going to begrudge them for making a living. So I understand where they're at. I think there's some of the realtors out there who are obviously trying to protect their rights. In other words, they're making commissions off of properties they sell. I get it. I'm not going to begrudge anybody to have their opinions on their livelihood. However, when you look at most residents, and I will say, and this is an informal poll, which just come into my phone and my email, 8 out of 10 residents absolutely want us to pass this. If you look at what's going on in neighborhoods today, and I can get into the numbers with you as I understand them, but if you get into a neighborhood and you're in a neighborhood and you buy a house because you've achieved that level of place in your life to where you can afford to get a place in Fishers, which I think is a
dream.
It's a great thing to attain, right? Fishers is a great community with great schools, great infrastructure, et cetera, right? So you get that house, and then shouldn't we try to protect that house from running into potentially 20, 30, 40, 50% rentals in that neighborhood?
Yes.
To my mind, that's not why we did that. So again, we're coming back to trying to offer something to protect everybody in those neighborhoods.
And what I am a Fishers resident, I've been a landlord, I am a landlord of Fisher Homes, so I can understand both sides of the coin here. But as a broker owner and a realtor, I feel that the ordinance allows for the everyday person in the neighborhood to have a little bit of protection. Because from what I've seen in 18 years of selling is the HOAs are pretty much either mismanaged, not organized, or not able to do the changes that they need to change their CCRs, right?
Correct.
So if you're a resident and you're involved in a 200 unit neighborhood and you can't get your HOA to change the laws and it's affecting your property values, what do you do?
Right, you're stuck.
Right.
Yeah, you're definitely stuck. Yeah. So we're trying to do this. There are some HOAs currently who have a tougher, like one house, two houses, 5%, and they're allowed to do that. So HOAs can go in there and be less than 10% in there if they so choose to do so, but they can't be more than 10%. And again, just so everybody understands what the ordinance says, is you've got anybody who currently has a rental house there, we're not taking that right away.
Right.
Okay? So if their neighborhood is currently above the 10% mark, and I think we're at about 8 to 10 neighborhoods right now, don't quote me on that, but I think I'm close, where they're starting to get up in that 24, 25, 28%. That's a lot that goes in there in some of those neighborhoods. So those are not getting taken away. What we're saying is you can keep them from rental till now until the end of time. Okay. But if you so choose to sell it and you're already over the 10% cap, then it must go to an owner-occupied.
I love that because I think that's that clarity is that if you are a landlord and you own home in Fishers as a landlord like I do and many of my brokers in our community do, is that can stay as a rental. It's just the next time you sell that property, if the rental cap above 10%, that home has to go to a homeowner.
Correct.
So why do you think that the typical, Fishers residents doesn't have a lot of information on it? Why would they be opposed to something like this?
Again, they start hearing all sorts of stuff that goes on. It's almost like watching too much of one newscast versus another
Yeah.
newscast, right? It's really what they hear and they believe is solemn truth, right?
Yeah, okay.
Again, they talk about taking away property rights. Well, I'm just going to be flat out honest with you. I sit in a planning commission and every PUD committee that the city has. I've been on there for a long time, since I've been on council for a long time. Okay, we take away people's property rights and zoning all the time.
Right.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we try to give them, enough property rights to retain, but this is really not taking away property rights. There is a petition that you can go back. There's an appeal process for whatever reason you feel you're in a hardship or you believe your case is different. Okay. The city's not going to say, no, hold on, you're already over your 10%. Of course, we're going to listen to those residents. If there's a real true need to go ahead and rent that house, we're absolutely willing to listen.
So let's say it passes, and we start January 1 of 2026, and I either get reload for military or a job, or there's a death and I have a hardship. I can appeal if my neighborhood's over 10%, which is very few. There's only 8 to 10 neighborhoods that we're even talking about here. So if I'm in one of those 8 to 10 neighborhoods and I have to sell and I can't, for whatever reason, these hardships, you guys will give an exception and allow that to become a rental.
Well, we'll hear an exception, okay? It'll be up to the group who's on that appeal process to make sure all those things are legitimate reasons to go ahead and do that. Okay. And I'm not saying that the city's not going to withhold if there's a real legitimate reason. Okay. And we've already got stuff baked into that ordinance right now, so that if you're getting transferred for work, like Lilly employees and Roche employees who go to, I think, Switzerland and England, they get to rent their house during that time. Snowbirds, right, who go there. And or if you have you're renting to a family member, right? Okay. You own a home and you're putting your kids in there, that's fine. It doesn't matter whether you're over the 10%, you can do that, right? Okay. And then I think there was one other, military. You get deployed by military. That's already in there. The rest of it would have to go through the appeal process.
Yeah, and I think that those kind of details are not being discussed, that there's exceptions and there's hardship exceptions. There's also a permitting process, and right? Can you talk to me about that? If you're a current landlord, are you starting to get permits then, starting in 2026?
Yeah. So you'd have a registry. There's a new piece of software, and I forget which name it is, but telemetry or whatever it is, and they have to go register on the site. So that's great news for us too, because now we know who the renters are who own the home. We have a contact number and a name in case they don't do the things with the house or the renters aren't doing things with the house that need to be done, i.e. maintaining the outside, which we get a lot of calls on, paying their storm and utility bills, et cetera, et cetera. Now paying their trash bill, which is now a citywide trash collection, so we bill for that too. Okay, if that doesn't get paid, who are you going to? Now at least we know. We have that all registered out. We're also going to know really who the bad offenders are, right? Because you'll have a registry of what that is.
And it just allows you guys to have someone to have accountability.
Correct.
When there's a problem with a house, it's falling apart, or whatever it may be, there's too many cars in the driveway, or there's ruckus, or what have you. You guys are able to have a contact to call.
Yes.
Because right now you
don't
have anybody to call.
No. That's part of the problem, is you can't look at the residents who are there who are calling and complaining, and they go, well, why don't you know this information? How can't you, again, now we will.
Yeah, and I think that's really nice to have a registry, just so you guys have an idea of, on a high level, who in the neighborhood are not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Correct.
Right.
That's exactly right.
And simply just to clean it up. Like, it's not that tenants and renters don't love and maintain their home. It's the landlords are usually out of state, right?
Many, not all, but many.
And if they're out of state or whether they're here, they don't care, right?
Well, I don't want to say they don't care. I think there's probably some that don't care. I'm not going to throw a whole group under the bus. I think there are probably some very good landlords out there which run a very good business and make sure their houses are maintained. And so I'm not beating up on anybody. However, we will know, right, by doing this registry where the complaints come in.
Okay. And then, so talk to me about if this, or when this potentially passes, how do you feel like the backlash will be from this community, or will there be massive support? It just depends.
I think there's going to be a lot of support from everything that I've been seeing and all the phone calls I've been getting, and it's getting widespread now with the amount of texting
Yeah, I
and all the
bet.
stuff which has been hitting the airwaves. And, we've gotten a lot of emails to the city, and even me personally to my phone. I had 2 people calling me this morning on my phone, so,
Oh my
which is
gosh.
interesting. I mean, literally call me.
Wow.
Non-identified number, but it wasn't spam. It didn't say spam, so I picked it
Right.
up. And both of them were in support of us passing this, which will happen Monday. Monday is the meeting.
Yeah, tell
It's
us
council
about
meeting
Monday so we can have people attend, or?
So the meetings, we're always the 3rd Monday of the month unless it's a holiday on that Monday at 7 o'clock down at City Hall.
Okay.
So everybody's welcome to attend.
Awesome.
I am the president, so I'll be running the meeting. So we'll have a number of items on the agenda, including this one. But one of the things that I'm going to allow at this one is I'm going to allow for public comment.
Okay.
However, it is not legally required that we have a public hearing for this item. I'm going to make that very well known, okay? So what typically I say to the people when they come up is, I need your name and address for the record when you come up to the thing. You have 3 minutes in which to speak, and I would ask people, don't come up and repeat each other. That's what I'd ask for.
I like that.
And I'm going to tell them this time, I'm going to be hard fast at 3 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay,
got
I'm going to
you.
cut you off at 3 minutes because I don't know how long it's going to go. I'm also going to let them know that I'm not going to tolerate a lot of back talk from the audience. You'll be giving your time up in front because I just don't want it to get out of hand.
Yeah, and we want to just get to the point and
Yeah.
let's stick with facts and data.
Yeah,
And
I just don't need it to turn into just a brawl,
No.
right? I mean, so we don't need that. And so I just want to make sure everybody maintains proper decorum.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what the city of Fishers is known for, right?
We hope, yeah.
We hope, and
yeah.
we want to keep that,
Right.
like that kind of sense and culture of what we have is that we can have discussions like this, and we can have it in a polite way.
Yeah.
Right. And so I encourage everyone to come, right, on the 3rd
Yes.
Monday to discuss it or even hear both sides.
Right.
Overall, I am a realtor, I'm a broker owner, I'm also a landlord. So for me, I don't mind the fact that you guys, the city will have this ordinance passed because I appreciate the fact that there are people who make landlords or make us look bad, right? And
Right.
don't do a good job, and it hurts property value. Many of my clients have concerns as well, and they are saying, I don't like that there's a tenant in my neighborhood because of X, Y, and Z. And when my realtors go take photos and there's cars and there's garbage on the side of the street, guess whose house is going to be hurt if that tenanted home isn't taken care of? Not that it's the fault of the tenant. I believe it falls on the landlord to make sure that they have the right tenant in there and that their home is kept up. So
We've said that all along, but when you don't know who the landlords are, it's really tough to go
Yeah,
do that.
how do you
So
do
How do you
that?
do that, right?
yeah, so I feel like this is very avant-garde of City of Fishers in terms of creating a kind of a loose, a loose restriction on us. And I agree that there's neighborhoods that have the 5% and 7%. So if neighborhoods want to go less than the 10% cap, they sure can.
They sure can.
Right?
Right.
And why not? And
Right.
so I've asked several people. I have a Bigger Pockets realtor on my team, and he's basically a nationwide elite investment realtor. He sells about 100 units to 130 units a year in Indianapolis. 80% of them are tenanted, and he believes that this is a good thing in general. He does believe that it's gonna kind of catch on wildfire because other cities are gonna like this, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Why? Why do you think that?
Well, again, I think that this is not a unique problem just to Fishers.
Correct.
Right? We're just the first ones to go ahead and tackle it.
I
right?
agree,
And
yeah.
so I think when we're lucky enough to have a mayor like Scott Fadness around there, he's a super smart guy. He does super good things for the residents, right? I mean, Scott's a guy who works every single day to make sure the community is better for our residents. And when you look at that, he's going, this is good public policy at the end of the day, and people sign off for it. I think some people are going, let's see what kind of bullets they take first so we won't take as many later when they
Sure,
sign
it
on. But
always
that's all good.
happens.
That's all good for them. But I expect Carmel to follow next. Probably Westville, Zionsville, Noblesville, they're all looking at it. I think you'll get some more in the donor communities as you go around. I think at some point, maybe there'll be a lawsuit, 2, 3, 8, who knows? But
Sure.
I think it'll end up back down to the legislature here within 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
My gut.
That's great. So all across the board then in the state.
I believe so. I think people are going to see it and they're going to want to at least take a look at it and
Copy it.
either copy it or adapt it maybe a little bit, but see where they're at.
I like
I think
that.
it's going to set a precedent is what it's going to do.
And I think I want to shed a little bit of light and that would explain why this has been a 2-year process, right? 2 to 3 years ago, big investors, big companies were coming in and purchasing Fisher homes, and they're doing it in cash, so they're beating out homeowners, right? So homeowners couldn't purchase homes, and it was really hard to see. We ran buyers to 3, 4, 5 different houses, and it would take them that many houses, that many offers just to get under contract
Right.
because they were competing with cash companies. Those cash companies were offering as is. Then they were taking over the home, tenanting it, not making the repairs. They were offering high because they knew why, right? We knew that the cash flow would work on that kind of a situation. So what we saw as a brokerage was that buyers could not find affordable housing in Fishers because so many companies were coming in and purchasing them. And on the flip side, it was really cool to see, as we represent sellers, some sellers were saying, we will not sell to an investment company. If it's an investment company, we don't want to do that to our neighbors. So it was really interesting during that time. It was hot and heavy, and people couldn't get houses. These companies were giving riders where we're going to take over the whole house, sign away, 2 weeks, here's your cash, right? How do you compete with that?
I agree, and that was absolutely what everybody was saying to us, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I had plenty of people who were all on my age group, right? With kids that are now starting to want to buy their first homes. They were going in there trying to buy their first homes, and they would lose out on 7 offers they try to make, right?
And
That's not really what we're after.
No, and I think what a lot of people don't realize that when you're in the mud of the 2020, 2021, 2022 real estate here in Indianapolis, especially in Fishers, was that their inventory has always been a struggle for us. And so why are we selling to large companies? Why can't we sell to people who actually want to live, be here, enjoy the parks and all that we have to offer?
Absolutely. I mean, they're making their arguments, and that's fine that they make their arguments. I'm just not signing on to it. You know, they tried to bring in the political stuff, and I don't believe this is a Republican-Democrat issue. I think
tell me more.
I think this is a citizen issue, right?
Okay.
You're trying to get kind of pulled the one way. Well, that's not what good Republicans do, or that's what Democrats do. And I'm just not going to listen to those silly arguments, because at the end of the day, it's about the residents, right?
Yeah.
I still feel local government is a place where people see what really happens in their life on a daily basis.
Agree.
And I try to remind everybody that even though we may put an R or a D next to our name when we go run in the elections, really what we're taking care of is really block and tackling stuff, right?
Yeah.
We're doing economic development to keep taxes low. We're doing public safety to keep you guys safe.
Yes.
And then we're doing infrastructure, roads, bridges, sewers, things of that nature. Not really a lot of sexy political stuff there. This falls into that not sexy, not political stuff by taking care of our neighbors and our residents to make sure that they're able to have the life they chose to have when they bought their property here in Fishers.
Oh, I love that. That's so well said, that you protect these residents that purchased, created the American dream, worked their tails off to purchase, and then if they're in a community that doesn't have a cap, like many, and you have 50% rentals, typically and statistically, the rentals aren't taken care of. So you by and large, your property value is going to go down, or you're not able to sell like you thought you'd be able to.
I believe that. I agree with that.
I believe that because I worked it. We felt it. We saw these years where people couldn't get into Fishers and couldn't purchase. Do you feel like there's a situation where we're pushing people to not be renters in Fishers? Because I know that's one of the things that opposition says.
Well, the interesting thing is that we get beat up by that other side of saying we're issuing too many apartment building permits, right? Get too many apartments here in Fishers, which I always think is funny, because I think if you look at it from 30 years ago, where the population was and as many apartments as we had, I think we're probably pretty equal, okay, in terms of the population rate to as many apartments. So I always find that funny. However, I mean, these apartments are renting like crazy.
Oh,
I mean, they're
crazy.
and we try to limit some of the apartment growth here in the city to that confined area. Let's get them downtown. Let's create the vibrancy. I mean, they have spread a little bit. I don't like them spreading a lot, just FYI. But that argument there, I get some people go, why are you issuing more apartment things, right? That's not the right thing to do. You're bringing these type of people into town. I always wonder, what kind of people are we talking about, right? I mean, my daughter's one of those people, by the way. So I think at the end of the day, I think we're trying to strike a balance. And I think we've done a very good deal in striking a balance here. When we got up to the point, and this is where Scott was absolutely a leader, when they changed to the 123 property tax cap, right? And we needed to shift our focus from rooftops to other items, i.e. rentals, okay, both in apartment buildings and townhomes or whatever, and then over to businesses. We had to shift our attention, because other than that, we were going to be capped out in terms of where our tax rate was going to be, and you have to provide services for your residents. So, and we've done a tremendous shift there, right? With the amount of money that we put into so many other things. I mean, the Fishers Event Center is going off like crazy, right?
It's so cool.
Yeah, and then, the community center is opening. All those things are coming in. The Stefanato's coming in from Italy. There's so much good news happening in Fishers. To have this kind of take a precedent and start to argue about it, when at the end of the day, it's just really us looking out for our residents. I say, it's unfortunate.
I think that I feel that for you guys and for the city of Fishers. What you just said is really well said, and I think that there's so many bigger issues that we could be talking about. And tell me, this ordinance can be changed, right?
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
a forever
again,
thing.
it's not written in the Constitution, right? So
Right?
you don't need to go get states ratifying it. I mean, you need to
Yeah.
get 5 out of 9 council members to say, oh, you know what,
Never
we really
mind.
need to change it, and then it's changed.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not written in a stone tablet.
And it seems to be affecting a very, very small percentage of people who want to, like companies or people who want to purchase and create rental properties here, right?
I believe so.
It seems like a very small percentage.
Yeah.
So, well, we thank you for sharing. And I guess your goal would be, let's have everybody who wants to have a voice heard come on Monday.
Correct.
The third Monday. And it will be this upcoming Monday, April 21st.
Correct.
At 7 p.m.
7 p.m. City Hall.
City Hall. Okay, so I will leave the information here on Portfolio Podcast, on our YouTube, and we just love chatting with you. We thank you for your intelligence, your experience here. I know you know so much more about city planning and development, and what I love to touch on is that the city council has a wealth of knowledge that the everyday person doesn't, where you're connecting all the dots of what's happening in the city, and you see the economic development, the growth, the negative. You guys see it all, so we have to trust that you guys know what you're talking about and you did the research, and then this is good for all.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Appreciate your time.
Great to see you.
All right, everyone. See you guys Monday, April 21st at 7 p.m.